Welcome to Pinsar Basketball Live. A little bit of a late session and a really quick live. And to those of you who tuned into our 4 hour one and you're like, yo, you're back again. Yeah, well, that's what happens when you have a major blockbuster trade that happens in your conference. While I did have a bit of a reaction, I do think that sometimes instant reactions are not always the best reactions. So we got to talk about this New York Knicks trade. Mikal Bridges going to join the Villanova boys in New York. And what does it mean for OG Anunoby? Well, if you're listening to Twitter, if you're listening to Reddit, what it means is your favorite team just got OG Anunoby. And if you're a Toronto Raptors fan, you're probably thinking OG Anunoby's going to be a Raptor. And if you're a Mavs fan, you're like OG Anunoby's going to be a Mav. And if you're a Golden State Warriors fan, apparently Klay Thompson is going away and OG Anunoby's coming back. OG Anunoby has become the free agent of free agents because people don't understand opt-ins and opt-outs apparently. Okay. There are some real Raptor implications here, and I think that they start with number 1, there was real concern, at least on my part, that there would be some competing teams for playing spots next year. I'll apologize right now if the internet is a little bit laggy and if we get cut out, I'll have to cancel the stream, but I'm on 1 bar right now, so if I'm super laggy or if the audio is a little bit laggy, I apologize. I do not understand what is going on with the internet, but nevertheless, the real implication here for me is two-pronged. Number 1, the Nets were supposed to be better than you next year. I don't know if you agree with that. Certainly. But if we did a preseason poll prior to this Mikal Bridges trade, with Mikal Bridges there, with potentially them getting some guys back, getting some guys better, with how underrated the Raptors have been, bro, biggest RE. I don't understand this. Huh? They need to make OG to the Mavs happen somehow. Where is this rumor coming from? That's what I want to know. I would love to understand where OG from the Mavs came from. Anyways, the longer story here is that you have real competition being just wiped away if you're the Toronto Raptors. First, you had the Chicago Bulls trade away effectively one of their best. Bro's biggest red flag is that he can't wait until a reasonable time to do his live. Sure. Okay. Well, I have to sleep at some point. I got to stop responding to comments. The Chicago Bulls were better than the Raptors this year. The Brooklyn Nets were better than the Toronto Raptors for most of this year. You can make arguments as to why that was supposed to be, and it doesn't really matter, to be honest. I genuinely think that right now, with the Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso swap and potentially DeMar DeRozan leaving the Chicago Bulls, maybe I'm exploring Zach LaVine trades, etc. The dysfunction is that organization. There's a very good chance that the Toronto Raptors are definitively better than the Bulls. That's 4 easy wins. Then you have the Washington Wizards. That's a lot of easy wins. Then you have the Detroit Pistons. I'm assuming if the Raptors just take care of business, they're going to clean up about 22 easy wins. You have the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, the Brooklyn Nets. At some point, you might just make the play-in by default because the Nets and the Bulls were really the only teams in the way of that. The Nets, the Bulls, the Atlanta Hawks, right? All you need is for one team to fall out of your way at this point. You're going to be 10th seed by default, whether you win 27 games or 29 games. You're in the play-in. Congratulations. So that's the first bit of, in terms of implications, right? MJ saying, unfortunately, the implication is their center, Hartenstein, is a sacrifice, not OG. They will target centers in this draft. I'm hearing that. I'm hearing that they are going to look to package 24 and 25, and they're going to try to move up and try to get Zach Edey or Yves Missi or someone else. I get all of that. Maybe Khalil Ware. They'll probably target Zach Edey because Edey is probably the closest thing to a ready-made, serviceable center who can actually contribute next year. Billa while K, can you break down the Houston, Brooklyn, and Phoenix swaps? All of that was really confusing. Sure. So the general theme there is that The Houston Rockets would like to trade for Kevin Durant. They believe that the most appetizing thing to be able to trade back to Phoenix in an exchange for a Kevin Durant trade, which would naturally spark a rebuild in Phoenix, would be to give the Phoenix Suns some of their picks back. The Nets were the team that had Phoenix picks due to the Kevin Durant trade. So in this trade, swap, exchange, whatever Houston acquired, some assets they believe will be very desirable for Houston. Sorry, will be very desirable for Phoenix in the potential Durant swap. Effectively, you got to look at it like this. If trades Kevin Durant, likely they are signaling being bad. Okay. They're already going to be bad, frankly. But because of that, AT02 saying unpopular opinion, but I think Hardenstein is more important to the Knicks than OG. You're probably right. That is a very unpopular opinion. Look, I don't know what this means for OG Anunoby. I am the pioneer of the OG Anunoby is coming back to Toronto Brigade. The OG Anunoby to Knicks is not locked. I pretty much started this on the internet. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone in the world questioned this unquestionable OG Anunoby, Leon Rose's son alliance thing. And now it's like he's an absolute free agent. Everyone thinks that they can get him. I don't necessarily know if that's true. The way to view this, if you are a fan of another team, is to say, did the Knicks get the all clear from OG before making this trade? That's the devil's advocate, right? You could say they make this trade because OG agrees that he's willing to come back at a reasonable amount. They think, hey, Mikal Bridges is an incredible, asset at his price. So let's grab him at that price. 21, $22 million is a great deal for Mikal Bridges, who was pretty much a role player when Robert Sarver and the very cheap Phoenix Suns signed him to that deal. And so you look at it from the Knicks perspective, they just swapped Bojan Bogdanovic for a really good player in Mikal Bridges. And they gave up a lot of draft assets to do that. And if the Toronto Raptors had decided to trade off of OG Anunoby 3 years ago, this is probably the type of return you would have gotten for OG Anunoby. 3-4 first round picks plus a pick swap. I think that's fair value. This is the other side of it. That's the other side. That the Knicks looked at OG Anunoby. Now, everything was kumbaya with OG, according to, some people. They said, hey, the Knicks are this dominant. This is their defensive rating. OG has the highest plus minus, et cetera, et cetera. But then there were rumblings coming out of the Knicks organization that he doesn't like to play hurt. Again, you got to ask yourself when Windhorst or Adrian Wojnarowski is tweeting about OG Anunoby not wanting to play through pain. I think you have to ask where that's coming from. Is that coming from the Knicks organization? Because we certainly didn't hear that OG Anunoby didn't like to play through pain when he was with the Raptors. But now that the organization that is managing his pain and managing his medicals is leaking this out, I believe that maybe there is some sort of buyer's remorse on the Knicks side. Once OG let it be known that, hey, I'm looking to test free agency. I know I said maybe I was willing to come back for 27, 28, but I'm not really so sure about that right now. I would like to get more. I think maybe they could have looked at this and said, okay, it's time to get some insurances here, right? And Mikal Bridges is not going to get moved twice in an offseason. Allegedly, the Houston Rockets were also making a strong competing offer for Mikal Bridges. Bridges has a known MT saying you and the Raptors fan guy killed it. Thank you so much. Appreciate that, man. So if Mikal Bridges was going to go to Houston, he probably was never going to come back to the Knicks. Maybe the Knicks paid an extra draft pick in order to get the deal done now. They probably did overpay by a draft pick. I think the implication for the Raptors is simple. You just cleared out one of your competing teams in the Eastern Conference, in the Atlantic Division, in the Brooklyn Nets. The Brooklyn Nets are probably not going to be competitive next year with Ben Simmons and God knows what else on their roster. I'm not saying it's 4 easy wins or anything like that. I'm just saying there's a team that's going to probably be a lot worse than you next year. I think that's worth it. In terms of the OG Anunoby thing, as I said, it can go one of two ways. Either they got the all clear from OG to do this, okay, and now they're envisioning a front court with OG and Mikal Bridges paired with a backcourt of Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo and Jalen Brunson, with Josh Hart coming off the bench as a utility guy, Mitchell Robinson as a starting center. Maybe OG is a small ball center in lineups where they go super small against the Celtics, etc. Maybe they're looking at Mikal Bridges eventually being the replacement to Julius Randle. Now, this was always going to be the plan. Initially, this plan was supposed to be for Donovan Mitchell. Did something happen? Did they look at Donovan Mitchell and look at their core and say, hey, Mikal Bridges fits better with who we are? We already found our Donovan Mitchell in Jalen Brunson. Maybe. That's certainly possible, because what they just gave up for Mikal Bridges is rumored to be what they were initially going to offer for Donovan Mitchell. The 5 first-round picks, 4 first-round picks, all the picks that they held out of the OG deal. So they did get their star. Some people will probably say it wasn't a real star in Mikal Bridges, but Mikal Bridges prior to last year was a hell of a player. He had a really good season in 2020, 2021 in Phoenix, where he was all a hell of a player. So there's a chance that you could say, hey, maybe you got the perfect complementary piece to Jalen Brunson. Some people could argue he's probably an upgrade on OG Anunoby, at least offensively, and he does a lot of the same stuff defensively. I think they fit really well together. And personally, right now, if I'm a betting man, I think this means that the Knicks will make whatever offer is necessary to bring OG Anunoby back. Shadow Warrior saying Bridges is more durable than OG. Fact. Sure. Yeah, he is one of the most durable players in NBA history, and it is the OG Anunoby antithesis. And maybe this isn't so much OG Anunoby leaves us in free agency insurance as this is OG Anunoby is going to probably miss some time next year. So let's just make sure we still have this super versatile defensive wing on our roster. And hey, we have this opportunity. I'm not sure. And the reason that I think a lot of this talk about OG Anunoby is going to jump ship now that Mikal Bridges is there is premature. The only way it makes sense is if you really, really buy the whole OG Anunoby wants a bigger role in offense, and now Mikal Bridges is there taking more shots away from him, etc. Look, someone was always going to come in. Better it be Mikal Bridges than it be Donovan Mitchell, right? From the perspective of the Knicks, they have traded away 2025, 2027, 2029, 2031. 2029 and 2031 and 2027. Those are the real implication ones for me. I don't have a doubt that Jalen Brunson is going to hold up as an undersized guard and be really good. Josh Hart is approaching 30 really soon. It's like 28, 29. He's close. So he's going to be fairly paid on the other end of that deal. None of these guys are spring chickens. They're all in their late 20s, early 20s, like mid 20s to late 20s. They're all late 20s, actually. So you're batting away the future unprotected. 2030. This deal could be stupid as soon as 2027. So you'll survive next year and the year after. But anything can happen after that. You can be in cap hell. Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, any one of these guys could have an injury. Touch wood. I don't want it to happen, but I'm saying it could happen. There's a lot of things that can happen from now until forever. So you don't make this type of win now move unless you really believe you have a championship window. I don't know if you have a championship window without OG Anunoby. Did they just sacrifice their ability to bring back Isaiah Hartenstein? Sure, they did. But I don't think this means that OG Anunoby is gone. So Tony G saying OG to Philly looks really good. Based on what? OG Anunoby going and playing with that, guy who turned his back on not one but two countries, Joel Embiid. I don't see it, man. I don't get it. I thought Paul George to Philly was far closer to a sure thing, and then that kind of fell apart. So it'd be interesting to see the Sixers kind of fall on their ass here. If you're looking at the East next year for the Toronto Raptors, who are you competing against, right? You got the Boston Celtics at the very top, and they're going to stay at the top. Then you got the Knicks, okay? And whether OG Anunoby goes back or not, I do think that why do you think the Rockets would throw away a path they were headed on for a win now? What would KD really bring to Houston? I think KD would bring legitimacy. I think he would bring a very blunted, very weird, very incomplete title window. I think he would bring veteran mentorship in theory. I think it would be a mistake. I don't think they're anywhere close to competing. But, you have Fred VanVleet, you have, Dylan Brooks there. If you put OG Anunoby and you can parlay some of those young players and draft picks into depth, you have enough. You have enough to be competitive. I don't think you have enough to win a championship, but you have enough to be good. Donovan was tweeting about the Nets-Yankees game, which I thought was weird and out of character. So I wonder if something fell through with him at the very last minute. Yeah, it would be really interesting at this point if the Knicks turned around and traded the rest of their draft picks with Julius Randle and tried to get Donovan Mitchell. That would be insanity. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I think they gave up too much in this deal to retain anything else for the other deal. I also think maybe Donovan Mitchell has sort of sold himself in the long-term future in Cleveland, provided they're willing to move off of Garland. Daniel saying, yeah, I think Houston is rushing the rebuilding process. Yes. Well, anyways, so I realize the internet is probably very laggy, and this is probably very frustrating live to listen to, although no one is complaining. So I have no idea if that's true, but I'm assuming that, one bar is one bar. Thank God I finally figured out the lighting in the studio. It has been a complete whirlwind of trying to figure out the lighting, even though I'm a cinematographer and completely messed it up. The Trill is saying, do you think OG is a Sixer? Nope. Nope, not at all. I do not see that at all. No, I think OG, like if I were to build a pie chart on OG, it's not lagging on my end. Your camera quality is quite poor though. Well, that's the lag, my friend. That's probably what it is. Anyways, I appreciate 136 of y'all in here at 2:23. Can't sleep before the draft day. That's pretty cool. OG the Nets, that will never happen. No. No. I think the Nets are fully going tear down mode. They got some of their picks back here, so they're happy to, tear down. And the Nets wanted 5 picks for Mikal Bridges early in the year. They got 4. Not bad at all. They actually got 5. So they got 4 unprotected, and then they got the Milwaukee protected. So they ended up getting their asking price of 5 first-round picks. They all got a pick swap. So that would be technically 6 first-round picks, or 5.5 if you want to consider a pick swap 5.5. So look, I obviously think this is an overpay for Mikal Bridges. I think if you're the Toronto Raptors, you have to think of this from a long-term perspective. In the very short term, this helps you because if you did have this, we want to get OG back, we're going to make a pitch to him. I think the pitch is a little bit easier right now, especially if OG really does prioritize his role on offense, right? So you can make a case that the Raptors have an easier path to maybe convincing OG to say, all right, again, I have no idea if the Knicks have even made up their mind on this, right? But I think that the Raptors have an outside shot. They'll get the meeting with OG, if nothing, as a courtesy. They'll have the inside route in terms of understanding him as a player, and they don't have to sell him on what life in Toronto will be like. He already knows. I don't know. I always thought OG was a guy that prioritized pattern and routine. He always struck me as a guy who could get used to things, you know what I mean? Like quickly. And I wonder if he misses Toronto too. So all in all, I think the Knicks maybe balked. Again, you could take it both ways. As I said, you could look at it as the Knicks got the all clear from OG. I'm coming back and said, this is our title window. Let's go for it now. The East is wide open other than the Celtics. Let's be the second team. Let's see if we can beat this team at their own game. Let's get another versatile defender. Let's flip Julius Randle for something. Let's flip him for something. I don't know what you're going to get for him, but let's flip him for something of value, and let's unite the Villanova boys with OG Anunoby, with Mitchell Robinson, hopefully healthy, with some of these young pieces like Deuce McBride coming up off the bench. Let's make this happen. Or if they balked at the idea of paying a guy $40+ million, potentially, 38 to 40 million on a 5-year deal, apparently, if he's seeking it, and also not being sure if he's going to play through injury, right? If there is a culture disruption there, Bill Wall saying I'm a Mavs fan and I just don't want OG on the Mavs. Okay, well that's you. I don't think your front office would agree with that at all. We draft a big tomorrow and we bring back OG and I say we can compete too. Sure. Look, if you're the Toronto Raptors, you're gonna have to start getting competitive at some point. I'm not saying you should be happy that you can make the play in almost default at this point. But if you can string together a 36 win season, that should kickstart something that you can build on for the following year. This is always going to be a multi-year process. I think Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster have been pretty clear about that in their communication. Um, so I think that with the other teams around you tearing down, and we are not even in the off season yet. We have not seen what free agency looks like. We haven't seen what the draft looks like. There's sure to be at least 5 trades tomorrow, if not many more. Okay. So the draft is going to be busy. So if you start seeing Chicago tear down some more at the draft tomorrow, if you see them start leaning into long-term prospects and, you know, um, Tony G, Kalo, where to the Raps? Please, God, no. I will not be a fan of that move. So whether you're going to start this process this year or next year, you're going to have to do it at some point. And again, if Scotty is the player that you think he is, at some point you're going to want to get to the playoffs and you're going to want to be competitive. And better sooner than later. And right now, you have 2 teams really that are in your division. That's the Nets and the Knicks. The Knicks potentially, if this OG thing doesn't work out for them, you lose him. Then you have Mikal Bridges, and you have lost this boatload of draft picks, right? And a lot of those draft picks have been consolidated in Brooklyn now, a team that notoriously does not know what they're doing. A lot of the times, I don't think they have necessarily the greatest track record or the front office. And so, maybe things have changed, right? They've hit on some later picks lately. Day'Ron Sharpe has certainly been good. Dariq Whitehead, I believe in that pick. Some of these trades are showing some smart management. But ultimately, I think that the pathway for you is clear next year. And then potentially when you are looking to be a title contender, a lot of the teams around you will be aging out, specifically the Knicks, with Jalen Brunson probably edging closer to 30, 31. Everything about title windows, everything about, NBA, everything about competing is giving yourself the largest window possible to compete for titles. You want to compete for titles, you got to max out correctly. And sometimes, a generational, situation or a prospect or a free agent signing just puts a kibosh on all your planning. I think the Sacramento Kings built perfectly. Shaq and Kobe were too much, right? I think the Orlando Magic, had some very good ideas around Dwight Howard and Rashard Lewis. I think they had some good plans there with Jameer Nelson and Hedo Turkoglu. It just so happens that they bumped into better teams, right? I think, a lot of teams in the Western Conference built well, but, when KD decided to go to the Warriors, it was like throw out the book. So sometimes you can't control these things, but control what you can control. Give yourself a large enough window. Give yourself multiple cracks at it, just like the Toronto Raptors did time and time again. The Raptors give themselves from 2014 all the way to 2021 to compete for championships. They won one. Okay. That's what you want to do. You want to have a 7-year window and you want to build it with Scotty Barnes. And probably midway through that window, you're going to have to convince him that this is the best situation for him when he comes up for that next extension. So, look, my point is next year, you can start the building process now. I think this would probably be a good incentive for the Raptors to zig while the rest of the East is zagging. You know, um, go and be competitive. Keep Jakob Poeltl, develop RJ Barrett, develop Manuel quickly, prey on this young core, and then try to be what Orlando was this year, which is a young upstart team. Develop young players. Obviously, no one is asking you to bring back the Nick Nurse policy of letting young players rot at the end of the bench while you run your starters into the ground. Naturally, you develop while you win. Rebuild the culture the same way you did it last time. That was the blueprint under Dwayne Casey. And this time, hopefully, your star player is a little bit better than Kyle Lowry or, DeMar DeRozan. And that's no shade on Kyle. Obviously, Kyle's a legend, but severely limited. And if Scotty really does end up being that top 5, top 10 type of player in the NBA, well, then you're sitting pretty. And, again, the larger implication for the Raptors here is 2 division rivals, 2 conference rivals did some major moves today. One of those moves could backfire. I'm not sure right now, to be completely honest, who helps you win more next year? Isaiah Hartenstein or Mikal Bridges. If that's been remotely debatable for you, the Knicks have moved laterally, right? Because this move makes it almost impossible for them to bring back Isaiah Hartenstein. If they lose OG Anunoby as well, as commonly stated, they basically traded away RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickly, and 5 first-round picks to get Mikal Bridges. That's a lot, especially if you're not bringing back Precious Achiuwa. So I don't know, man. I'm not seeing like the huge upside for the Knicks. I understand they're going to be a 55 to 60 win team. I just don't see them winning a championship necessarily. I really like that team. I really enjoyed rooting for them this year. You got to do something. But if you lose OG in this process because he's unhappy with, how he's going to fit into the offense or whatever, I'm not really sure you're better. And what I do know is that you've lost this entire coffer of draft picks. And I think that it's worth noting the Knicks do still have 5 first-round picks over the next 3 drafts. So they'll still have some flexibility to move off of that Julius Randle contract. Overall, I'm curious to see what I'm going to say on Player's Choice tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure yet if I'm going to be super bullish about this trade after I get some Z's in me, but we'll see. All right, guys, I'm going to talk to you later. But yes, overall, I think the Raptors win this trade because, again, 2 division rivals make some big moves. You consolidate 2 competitors into 1 competitor. I don't think the Nets are going to be competitive next year. The Nets, the Wizards, the Hornets, the Pistons, the Bulls. That's 5 teams. A 15-team conference, man. 15-team conference. And there are 5 teams that I can make a very, very solid case are going to be worse than you. And I don't know if any of them are going to pivot into, okay, let's go win games. But could I see a world in which we're better than the Hawks? Yeah, it's hard to believe. But yes, there is a world in which you could be better than the Hawks. There's a world in which you can be better than a lot of these teams. But Jimmy Bob Lee saying Hartenstein to the Raptors. Yeah, I don't know about that. Are you still doing the 11 a.m. thing on the other channel? Yes, I am. So I have a writing assignment. I got to do the 11 a.m. thing, and then I got to set up our live, and I got to figure out what the hell is going on with the internet because I cannot have 2 bars and 1 bar on the internet going while. And yo, you know what the worst thing is? I just threw out my 40-foot Ethernet cable, so there's going to be no wired connection either. Fuck. I don't know what I'm doing here. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. I wish this live was a little bit more coordinated and a little bit more succinct instead of 27 minutes of me rambling. 15 was over. I don't know. Maybe this is like one of those J. Cole things. Might delete later. You know what I mean? There's a reason the Sixers pulled out of the Paul George option. We need some more shooting and defense in the starting lineup. Should we trade for Cam Johnson and Dorian Finney-Smith since Brooklyn is about to have a fire sale? That's a really interesting. I like Cam Johnson a lot. I really do. I am a little bit worried what they would want for him. Number one, like fire sale does not mean every player goes. Usually, I feel like someone's going to be able to beat that offer, and I'm not really sure I want to compete with it. Dorian Finney-Smith. Yeah, I mean, he was a rotation piece. I'm not sure about the health of Cam Thomas. Like sorry, Cam Johnson. Like I really like him as a player. Like I really do. I've always enjoyed him as a player. I just think the biggest thing with him is health. I wonder now what this means for the Nets bringing back Nick Claxton. Does this open up some more space for him? Does he become a free agent? You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of implications here. Again, like I'm not willing to just say, okay, the Nets are like the worst team in the league next year, but they certainly could make 2 moves and they'll probably get there real fast. To me, I'm hearing they want to be bad, right? They don't believe in this core. They don't think they have an ascending franchise player on their team. Cam Thomas ain't it. Dariq Whitehead ain't it. Nick Claxton ain't it. Ben Simmons ain't it. So, Mikal Bridges wasn't it. And had they not held their picks, they would have had no incentive to tank. But now they got some of their picks back. So now there is a full incentive to tank. And there's 2 drafts worthy, 2 drafts worth of really high upside, high-end lottery talent that they could really, suck themselves into. And I have a feeling that they will absolutely try to bottom out. So yes, they might have a fire sale. I don't think the Raptors are going to be the best bidders for it. But if somehow the Raptors could end up getting Cam Johnson and they believe that he's going to be healthy, yes, he fits in beautifully with what the Raptors like to do. He makes too much. Rather have the other Cam to replace Gary Trent Jr. Cam Thomas will need to be paid at some point too, you know? Why don't the Bulls do the same thing as Nets? I mean, they kind of are. I mean, if you look at the broader implication of the East, right? You have Franz Wagner, right? And Jalen Suggs. You have Cade Cunningham, Scotty Barnes, Evan Mobley. All these players extension eligible. Now we've heard the news about Scotty Barnes. If now I don't believe any of these other guys max plays. I gotta be honest. I think Franz is probably the one that's closest. Evan Mobley is close. I don't think Jalen Suggs and Cade Cunningham are there. If Cade Cunningham gets paid like that, whatever dumpster fire is the Detroit Pistons, they will continue to be that, right? So again, like I don't changing coaches is going to change the trajectory too much for the Pistons. They're still going to be pretty bad next year. I believe they're going to be pretty bad. So again, there's probably someone in Detroit making a video right now, just like this, saying, "Oh, look, the Raptors are crap, the Wizards are crap." I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of casuals in the NBA put the Raptors in the same tier as the Pistons. I assure they are not. I think the Raptors just became the 10th best team in the East. Should I have said this and just ended this video in a minute? Probably. That's probably what I should have said. I think the Raptors are now a top 10 team in the East. After this trade, with Mikal Bridges moving on, Dennis Schroeder, and whatever the hell else is left in Brooklyn, and them showing a clear direction that they're willing to tank. Same thing with, and look, there's other teams that are on this pathway too. Where's Miami? If Jimmy Butler gets moved, where's Miami? If Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo continue to age out at that rate, what is that team's future over the next 2 years? If you are the Toronto Raptors and you are eyeing 2025, 2026, which is the year after this year, as your opening to a championship window or a contention window where you want to rebuild, you want to build to a championship. If that's the equivalent of Kyle Lowry gets a shot blocked by Paul Pierce in the, as the Raptors had home court advantage in the playoffs as the third, if that's that equivalent year, then next year would be the year to make the play-in and try to be competitive. Do you know what I mean? So I think that that's it. And also, I mean, Joel Embiid is approaching 30 and has a lot of questionable history with injuries, right? Is anyone super scared of the Cleveland Cavaliers? You know what I mean? Like what are we if Scotty Barnes and Grady Dick and Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett work out for you the way they're supposed to and you build around this thing the way you're supposed to, I could see the Raptors being a top 6 team very soon. Don Vito saying, I heavily disagree. The Raptors will be worse than the Pistons next year. Cool. Yeah. I don't think so. But hey, if we are worse than the Pistons, hello, Cooper Flag. It's clear sailing ahead. We're going to be positive about that. I'm not saying, positive vibes or whatever, but hey, man, at least we're not swimming in the fear of having to give up that pick anymore, right? So the Raptors have ultimate flexibility. I'm just saying it's going to be really hard to be worse than some of these teams next year. Thank you. I'm not sure if that's been a compliment, but thank you. I appreciate it. Alrighty, guys. I'll talk to y'all later. And I hope that this internet thing will fix itself out. We just did a 4-hour live where I don't think internet was such a laggy issue. But the minute I started this one, it suddenly started to get real laggy. And I don't understand why that is, because you would think that at 2:40 in the morning, almost none in the world to be using internet. But who knows, man? Maybe this is the time when people are up doing crazy stuff on the internet. Wow, you liked this comment so much you wrote it twice, eh? Should we bring back JV as a backup center to Pirtle? No. I mean, for what? 5 million? Sure, maybe, but not for anything more than that. But he's familiar with the city. Yeah. All right. I'll talk to y'all later. And yes, at 11 a.m., I will be on Player's Choice. We will be talking about the NBA draft. We'll be talking about this trade. We'll be talking about a whole bunch of stuff. So if you want to get my opinion, again, in a different setting with a whole bunch of other people, are you being throttled by your provider? I don't know, but I'm pretty anti-Rogers, so I'm sure I'm getting throttled by them to some extent. I hope we sign quickly soon. So I don't understand why people are wanting for us to sign quickly soon. I think the minute you sign quickly, your cap space is gone. Now, first of all, you cannot really sign him until July 6th anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But hey, Rob, are you investing in GME stock? No, no, I'm not. For I hate Rogers too for myriad of reasons. Yes, we should form a group called the Rogers Sucks. Um, anyways, God, I'm sleepy. My larger point here is that I think that this trade should not be viewed as, oh my God, it's obvious that OG is leaving the Knicks. I think there's a very good chance that it can go either way, right? Um, and I do think that, like, as this person said, oh, the Pistons could be better than the Raptors. Yeah, there's a couple of teams down there where I'm like, okay, if everything breaks perfectly for the Pistons or the Wizards, well, not the Wizards. Let's be let's be real about the Wizards or the Hornets. I mean, at some point these teams are going to get good, right? Lonzo Ball and Brandon Miller and potentially Miles Bridges. I don't know. There's talent there. I just wouldn't bet on those teams being better than the Raptors. And I certainly wouldn't have bet on those teams being better than the Nets and the Bulls had they stayed intact. I think Alex Caruso going to the West and Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks makes those teams worse. So it removes two teams that were ahead of you. That's what I'm saying. Like I'm viewing this from a very strategic Lego building perspective, right? There's there's like 7 teams, sorry, there's like 12 teams ahead of you in the East if you're the Raptors, right? You got to beat 2, 3 of those teams in order to make the top 10. That's simple math, right? So I think 3 of those teams just walked out of your way for you. That's what I'm saying, you know? So we'll see. Anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. This one bar is really freaking me out. I'm scared to look at this live back and to see how bad the lag was. But anyways, I'll talk to y'all later. And definitely tune in at 11 a.m. if you want to give your boy some support on Player's Choice. All right, peace.